more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store. Out among the stacks of new releases, browsing with your future new best friends. You're gonna find a book you'll love to pieces. The girl behind the counter recommends dollar books and shelves of graphic novels. Titles old and new, you'll find them all. With action figures, board games, toys, and models to add to your new Comic Wednesday haul. The comic book store, the comic book store. 'Cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store.
Yes, we're back in your friendly neighborhood comic book store. This is Source Material Live. I'm your host, your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, to synergize with the release of the New Mutants movie, we are talking The New Mutants, issues 18 through 20, and if you're a go-getter, 21, which is the epilogue to the story. This is the ever celebrated The Demonbear Saga. Cover date for issue 18 was August 1st, 1984. It was in stores April 24th, 1984. The writer was Chris Claremont. And the colorist, cover, inker, penciler was Bill Sienkiewicz. Sienkiewicz. Senka. Ah, boy, I'd
Bless
like you. Yo, thank you. Gesundheit. Joining me in this discussion of the Demonbear Saga first from the Warlock and Thanos podcast, Al Sedano. How you doing, Al?
I'm a bear. Grr.
I'm sold.
There you go. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I like the story.
Good.
But I like the New Mutants anyway, so I'm always a fan of them.
Good. Well, I appreciate having you on. As I said to our next guest, you guys might have to carry me through this like a wounded Vietnam soldier. Ladies and gentlemen, he's been making a lot of appearances lately on Source Material Live. From the Cosmic Treadmill and Chris is on Infinite Earths. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Sheehan, how you doing, sir?
Hey, how are you? Had a pretty busy day today. I found out that our entire podcast feed on iTunes was not showing up because 2/3 of our episodes were all labeled as Season 1, Episode 1. So, which is a real pain. So I had to get a hold of our wonderful Podbean assistants, patrol, and asked them if there was a way I could fix this. And they said, yeah, there sure is. You have to go through every single episode and change it. So spent most of my day between having the internet go down for several hours, going through 330-something episodes of podcasts to try to take all the ones and ones out of it. So that's been my day. So this Demonbear might be a relaxing thing in comparison here to discuss a difficult story.
That was a horrible day. You're handling it better than I would. I'd have been flipping tables over.
Oh, you didn't see me a few hours ago. It was not a pleasant experience, especially getting that email back from them, because I'm figuring like, yeah, we took care of it for you. And no, not at all. You have to go through every single one. And Podbean, just like Blogger, has just updated. So it no longer looks like a website, and now it looks like an app. So it's like all bubbly and buttony, and when you push things, it like flashes up like you're on your iPhone. It's a bear. Bringing it back here.
Yes, that all sounds like a fucking nightmare.
It is.
It was unpleasant.
All right, so let's get into our book here this evening. Al, let me go to you first. I want to hear about your relationship to the X books and specifically the New Mutants.
Well, I mean, the X books were some of the first books I started getting when I actually started actively buying comics, as opposed to just, I don't know, magically having them in the house. And so X-Men was like X-Men and then New Mutants and then X-Factor were the second, third, and fourth titles I started buying a few years after this, around 87. And so this is definitely something I read as a back issue, but I was looking to get the whole collection of New Mutants. With one exception, issue 21 is actually one of those early issues I randomly had, so that's actually one of the first comics I've read. So that one definitely has a big nostalgia feel for me, because that was one of the first things I read, and I had no clue what was going on. I can only piece together whatever I saw in the issue.
Did you read the Demonbear Saga when it came out?
No, this is like, I didn't even start till like 4 years later.
Okay.
So I started at 87, and this is what, 83 or 84?
84.
84.
Yeah.
So when was the first time you read the Demonbear Saga?
Probably at that point, somewhere around between 87 and like 1991. Because by the time the series ended, I did have a full collection of New Mutants.
Okay. I only had one New Mutants, and that was the first appearance of Cable. I don't know why I had it. I think I might have started reading it at that time. I definitely read X-Force when that started. But much before the first appearance of Cable, I couldn't tell you anything about the New Mutants other than they were mutants, and maybe I could have guessed who was in it at the time. What did you think of the Demonbear Saga the first time you read it?
Well, I mean, the art was definitely. I'm trying to remember. No, I did read Sienkiewicz first. So yeah, I was already used to the Sienkiewicz art since I had read 21 first. It's like the first New Mutants issue I ever read, so I was definitely used to that. It was definitely a different story. I mean, I kind of thought, especially from the first few issues I read, picking up the first few issues, that it was going to be more kids in school. But this is definitely more, almost like horror story, kids in school.
Yeah, agreed.
So a little different when I was expecting. When it changed this way, a little different than I was expecting. But I did enjoy this one because, I mean, I really do love Sienkiewicz's work on this series, more so in the writing even.
Switching over to Mr. Sheehan, you do an entire podcast talking about the Chris Claremont runs on various X books. These podcasts run between 9 to 12 hours long, so I'm guessing you've read the Demonbear Saga at least once in your life. Just kind of, same question to you. What's your relationship to the X-Men books and to the New Mutants in particular?
Oh, well, I didn't. I was when this book came out, it was 84, so I was 4 years old. So this was a little bit before my time. I didn't discover the X books until the Jim Lee, Chris Claremont Volume 2 launch. So I didn't see any of this stuff initially, and my first run-in with the art was actually in ads that I would see in ElfQuest, the epic Marvel run. That was one of the very first things I ever collected as a comic collector, and I saw those ads and they scared the hell out of me because I mean Sienkiewicz's work is striking, and it's like a beautiful ugly. It's just very, very. It sticks with you. It's scary stuff. And I remember seeing it was an ad in an issue of ElfQuest that said something along the lines of like, "Don't call them the X-Babies anymore." And it was the Sienkiewicz art, and it just stuck with me. And I told myself right there, it's like, that's not something I'm ever going to read because it's just it's too out there. Fast forward a little bit, and I've got a full run of the New Mutants, and I love the New Mutants, and this is a story that I haven't read in a very long time. I think the last time I read it was probably around the turn of the century. And then I absolutely adored it. This time I liked it, but I think I set my expectation up a little bit too high. I think I was expecting to come into this thing and just be like, oh, this is just the best. And it's good, but it's, it was a little bit of a letdown to my expectation as I really built it up in my head in the weeks that led up to this episode.
Well, as I was telling you guys before the podcast started, I was more of an Avengers guy than I was an X-Men person, so I didn't read much of the New Mutants. I got into the X books much, much later, and that was when I think they did the X-Men split. There was X-Force, X-Factor, and then the X-Men. I think that's about the time that I was reading. I was big into Cable. He was one of my favorites back then. I was one of those guys. So I've never read the Demonbear Saga until now, and it was a chore to get through. I got to be honest, and I think part of it is not having read the preceding 17 issues. I just felt dropped into this world where it was a little hard for me to find which end was up.
Even in the early trade collections, like I remember back in the 90s when like DC would put a trade out of like a story arc, they would pick like if there was subplot pages in those issues, the single issues, they'd pull those out so they wouldn't distract from like the overarch of the story. Like the first Doom Patrol trade, the Crawling from the Wreckage trade. Before they made a series out of those, they did an initial printing of that first one, and they pulled all the subplots out of it. So you're just getting that one straightforward story. And I actually read this in the early version of the trade today, the Demon Bear, and I was surprised that they kept a lot of the stuff in the beginning with like Rachel showing up, stuff that if you went into this expecting a story, you'd be like just about the Demon Bear, you'd be like, well, what is this? It was it felt very strange to have that sort of ancillary story as part of the trade collection here, and I can imagine it would be a little bit confusing going in.
Yeah, the second two issues, 19 and 20, weren't nearly as hard to follow. They were a little hard to follow, but not nearly as issue 18, which had three different things going on. Yeah, they were store material based. Yeah.
Well, because at the time, because I mean everything was much more serialized, and New Mutants and X-Men were definitely almost like Claremont at times, almost writing a bi-weekly X-Men book with just a slightly different cast in each one. Because that Rachel stuff was happening in both those books at the time.
Yep.
All right, so our story begins with Rachel. There's a vision that I guess she's having of the future, where the X-Mansion gets shot up and Xavier is shot standing in the window. He pulls himself up by the curtains, and he's trying to get them to cease fire, and they're ignoring him, obviously, and he gets shot to pieces. And this is all a vision of the future. Now, as a reminder, because I don't remember who she is, I know the last name is Cyclops, but Rachel Summers is who?
The second Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah, an alternate future. Yeah, an alternate future daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey.
Yeah, this is basically she's from the future, Days of Future Past, future.
Okay.
Yeah, she was a hound sent to like hunt down mutants, basically.
Yeah, so this is all her memories of what happened, and I believe the split was supposed to be that Phoenix didn't die; she was just beaten, and they wiped her powers away.
Okay, she shows up at the mansion, and she's looking for Professor Xavier, and Magic answers the door, and she's like, well, Professor Xavier's not here right now. Can I take a message? And Rachel just says nope and takes off. And that's the last we see of her in this story. That about right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The second thing...
Sorry, go on.
It's okay. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that's apparently one of the differences for her was that, in the timelines, is that I guess Lianya never became Magic. She stayed just a child. If you know her, I don't know if you know her background.
Yeah, she didn't go to limbo. Yeah.
I was saying, Mark, I don't know if you know her background or not.
I know she's Colossus' sister, but that's about it.
She's Colossus' sister. She was like 5-6 years old, and they were for a time headquartered on basically an evil Lovecraftian island that Magneto used to run, and that's when her power to teleport was kind of activated, I guess, and a demon from there took her, and time in Limbo runs different. So while she was only gone for about 5 minutes, she aged like 8 years.
Okay.
So she goes away, a 5-year-old, comes back, they get her back 5 minutes later, and she's like 15. And apparently that's, I guess, a difference for them is that for Rachel, that never happened. So she just grew, Magic just grew up as a normal child regularly. So she's like, wait, how am I in the past? And yet she's the same age she was when I saw her die years later.
Okay. The second thing that's happening is there's a montage of Magma, Cannonball, Sunspot, all training in the Danger Room, and Magic and Danny Moonstar are just kind of hanging about. They don't really have offensive physical powers like that. Well, I guess Magic does, but she's still not part of the training, the Danger Room session. And they're just kind of sitting out, watching. They're kind of chatting about Cannonball having a crush on Magma, that sort of thing. The third thing that's happening is Danny is having nightmares about the Demonbear. And after training in the danger room herself, just fighting bears with a bow and arrow, she finally decides, enough is enough. I've had enough of these nightmares. I'm going to go confront this thing out in the wild. And so she summons the demon bear, and they have a fight, and she thinks she kills it. She does a pretty good job, considering the thing's got arrows all up in its face and jaw and whatnot. And then the bear just comes back to life and swats her, and of course she's broken and battered, and that's how we leave issue number 1. So I'll go to you first, Al. This first issue is kind of a hodgepodge, and it was a little hard to follow. And even at the end, I thought she killed the bear at first. So imagine my surprise when they're like, "Oh my God, Danny's broken in half," and and I'm like, "Wait, what? I thought she fucking killed the thing." So tell me what your thoughts are in this first issue.
Well, I mean, like I said, for me, it's a little hard to separate from my memories of it, and also having read the entire series. I read it for another show, the entire New Mutants, Claremont New Mutants run not too long ago for, what was it called? The 75 Greatest Marvels podcast. And so we did the entire New Mutants run. So, like you said, it does make more sense if you've read the entire run and the X-Men along with it, which I did, because that stuff fits in more, like the stuff with Rachel and everything. It makes more sense. So for me, like, that didn't confuse me at all. I knew exactly what that was and where that was going. But I could see if you're just reading this cold, you're like, what? The main thing here for me is the art. I love this art in here. I mean, that first page with Danny under the blanket, the checker blanket, with the demon bear face in the pattern and the colors slowly blending, bleeding into the bear.
Mm-hmm.
I love that page. And of course, the full page when you first see that bear. Because it's very much, Sienkiewicz is very much more of a, I'm not too good with like classical art stuff, but it's more like impressionistic. So
Okay.
it's more about
abstract. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's more about feelings instead of just showing like a photorealism of like what's going on, like let's say Alex Ross.
It definitely adds to, if you're taking this book into a horror, genre, even though it's meant for whoever the hell this was meant for at the time, age-wise. I think this guy's artwork does a very good job of painting pictures that would elucidate a horror motif.
Yeah, and also, I mean, they're teenagers, and if it's a book for meaning at teenagers, I mean, think about it. Teenagers, everything is angst, everything is life or death, whether it is or isn't. Everything is the most important thing. Every breakup is the most horrible thing ever. So something like this actually kind of fits for me for that kind of book. Every look that Cannonball gives to Magma is, breaking his heart completely, even though he just has a crush on her. And spoilers, it doesn't really go anywhere ever. Nothing ever happens with them. But I mean, it kind of fits, to me that way, with teenagers.
So every time I think about Cannonball, all I can think about is the series we did last year, where everyone just kept saying basically "Shut up, Cannonball." Gosh, help me. Which this is the one where Magneto and Xavier merge into one. Terrible Onslaught. Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Whenever anyone brings up Cannonball, all I can think of is Onslaught and "Shut up, Cannonball."
Oh yeah, that's where they graduated him into the X-Men. Yeah.
Yep. Chris Sheehan, your thoughts on this first issue?
Loved it. I'd actually read this not too long ago for just for my own blog. I shifted over to do some Marvel stuff, and this was one of the very first books that I went to because I remembered it so fondly, and thought it was great. I love these danger room scenes. It's weird because I was also reading a little bit of X Factor at the time where they had where they'd have the New Mutants show up on occasion on the whatever the ship approximation of a danger room was, and they would do practice sessions. And I just love this era of these characters, and I feel like Claremont puts it like all on display here. Like Al said, you got Sam like kind of not paying attention to what he should be doing because he's too busy, having the hot pants for Amara, and just really good stuff. I like the conversation between Danny and Magic, because those are two characters that they weren't really prominent when I came into reading X-Men. So when I started learning about these characters, it was more special because I didn't know them from anything. When I started, Danny Moonstar was, as far as I knew, she was a member of the Mutant Liberation Front, and Magic was, back to being a child and about to die from a virus. So actually seeing them in their, I suppose you could say their prime, is a real treat for someone like me who missed this era initially.
All right, issue number 19, which came out September 1st, 1984, cover date. This issue, Danny's in the hospital, and everyone's freaking out. They're trying to figure out what the hell happened to her. We're introduced to Officer Corsi and Nurse, what's her name? Friedlander, yeah.
Sharon Friedlander.
They will become important in the next issue. This is a lot of just them trying to figure out what the hell happened to Danny, what attacked her. Cannonball pitches that the bear is spiritual in nature, and they all berated themselves for not believing in Danny's worries about the monster. So there's a lot of just yelling and hollering and trying to figure out what to do next. We get and maybe Al, you can talk a little bit about what's going on here. We come out of this story, and there's this bit with the Starjammers.
Mm-hmm.
What was going on with the Starjammers around this time?
Do you mean specifically in this issue or in general?
Start with this issue, and then if you need to expand outward, please do.
Well, depends. Did you read 21?
I did not.
Okay, so...
Okay, that'll explain it.
Yeah, because there's stuff with the Starjammers here and stuff with Magneto in 20 and stuff in issue 18. That is that culminates in 21 with Warlock showing up.
Okay.
But not Adam Warlock. The Warlock who's the techno-organic member of the New Mutant. Yeah, and his father, the Magus. Again, not the Adam Warlock Magus. Because those characters were off the table at the time. They were dead. Thanos and Adam Warlock were dead from 77 to like 89, 90.
Okay.
And I believe it was just Claremont was a fan and just used the names for his own characters.
Okay.
But that's what all that is. That's what that is. That thing traveling through space in the first at 18 and then going crashing past the Starjammers and then crashing past Magneto's base. He lands on Earth in 21 and ends up joining the team then.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
so that's what that is.
I figured it was kind of an epilogue to the story. The story ends in earnest in issue 20, so I'm like, I don't feel like I need to read 21. When I was doing my research, most have it as 18, 19, and 20 is the Demonbear Saga, and 21 is the epilogue, so I didn't feel...
But I mean, it makes more sense if you read it as 21, because then the only subplot thing that has to be removed is the Rachel. Because the Warlock subplot starts in 18, so if you read 18 to 21, at least the subplot parts all make sense once you get to the end.
Gotcha.
It'll pay off, yeah.
All right, so I feel like they take on the Demon Bear in this universe, and it goes fairly well, but not but they don't defeat the bear, and the bear ends up transporting them into another dimension called the Badlands, where it's on his turf. And that leads us to the next issue, so I'll stop there and ask you, Al, again, what did you think of issue number 19?
Issue 19, again, I like this one. I liked it a little better than, I think, 18. Definitely, I like the introduction because I'm used to those characters, so they stay around for a while, just, so I like Tom Corsi and Sharon Friedlander, so I remember reading this, I'm like, oh, this is where they first show up. So it's kind of one of those things where you read something later on, and then you get that, when you read an earlier issue, you get like that missing piece of like, oh, this is where these people started showing up. That's where they come from. So there was that. There was a lot of little bits of the team I like. I liked Magma's professionalism throughout the whole thing. I mean, she's the most, outside of Mirage, she's probably the most closest to being a good soldier, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else has their own issues, and they let their issues and concerns take precedence. Rain's paranoia, Sunspot's, I guess, not arrogance so much as being, he's worried about screwing up. Yeah, machismo. That'd be a better way to put it. Cannonball's worried about screwing up, but Magma's like the one who's like, no, you don't leave a team member when they're wounded. We guard her. Don't be stupid. So for somebody who really doesn't get a lot of characterization throughout the series and ends up getting written out and kind of ignored for the most part forever, Mag, I have to say, like, she was written as pretty solid here.
One of the things I really liked about this issue was the connection between Wolfsbane and Danny, and sort of the acknowledgement that because Danny has been, is under a doctor's care and has been anesthetized, and they're talking about that she might never walk again and things like that, that when Wolfsbane tries to get a read on her, it's all a jumbled mess because right now Danny's so far out of commission. I thought that was a nice detail to put in there.
Oh, when she's being sedated and she's just kind of like laughing. She's like, hey, what's up?
Yeah. Chris Sheehan, what did you think of issue number 19?
I liked it a lot. I liked it was like in that hospital, it was so dark in there. It was so claustrophobic feeling in there. And I feel like that really served the story very well. Also, Alfred Hitchcock showed up for a panel, so that was something. I don't know if it was supposed to be him, but it damn sure looked like him. One thing I really like about the Sienkiewicz work is that the places feel lived in, but in a place you don't want to live in. The hospital just felt very, very gritty. And I love the idea, and it has nothing to do with the story, but how there's like this big snowstorm going on and they're stuck there. And the nurse just treats it like it's another day. She's like, oh, I'll go find you some pillows. I like that kind of, it just really lent a tone to the story, like a softness to the story that really, isn't warranted because this is anything but a soft story. I definitely liked the mind link with Danny and Rain. I like their relationship all around. I also like, and I don't know if this happens just yet or if it happens in the Badlands issue, but I know we have Rain like suspicious of working with magic because she's a witch. She makes these like passive aggressive comments like, it's like, well, not yet, witch, and that plays into and we even get a mention of the of Reverend Craig who will loom large over Rain's story in years to come as a creepy dude. I just really liked all that stuff here because just like Al said, it's like I met Reverend Craig before I heard of him, in an issue of X-Force or something, or Excalibur, I believe.
Yeah, there's an issue where she confronts him.
Yeah, where she overcomes and stuff. So to hear him getting a mention here, it tickled me a little bit. Just it's like, oh, okay, this was always sort of a thing then.
Yeah, and for any faults he may have, I mean, I'm not saying he's the greatest writer in the world, although I do like him. Claremont, one thing Claremont always was good at was making minor characters, like giving you a feel for who they were. So when something bad happens to them, they're not just
fodder.
Yeah, they're not just a stock person standing there. Kind of like, and I just actually I'm on that page. I'm skimming through it digitally. There's Alfred Hitchcock. You're right.
He is.
But you kind of got a feeling for the nurse and the cop of who they were.
Yeah, I was going to say they open the comic and there's some time spent with Officer Corsi, which I thought was interesting, and they give the nurse a lot to do as the kids are kind of panicking, and and the interactions between the New Mutants and Officer Corsi I thought was interesting too. He like makes a remark, and of course he gets snapped at by Roberto, and he was just like, "Hey, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here. I'm not trying, I'm not saying anything. Relax."
Oh yeah, the bear comment. It's like, yeah, we think she was mauled by a bear, and you're like, you're kidding. He's like, yes, this is Sunspot's like, yes, this is a big practical joke. Which is exactly what a arrogant 15-year-old would say.
Yep, mouthing off at the cop. All right, so issue 20. which is October 1st, 1984, exists in this other dimension, the spiritual home of the Demon Bear, which looks like a Native American plane. And this is where they have their final battle. And Magic gets a lot in this issue. Magic, ends up using her soul sword to finally cleave the Demon Bear in half, and out come Danny's parents. But it takes the entire issue to get there. In the meantime, the bear turns Officer Corsi and Nurse Friedlander into zombie natives, and they creates a whole bunch of more zombie natives. And when they finally defeat the bear, weirdly enough, they're able to save Officer Corsi and Nurse Friedlander, but they're now stuck being Native Americans, and they offer.
You're not going to say how they said it in the issue?
Yeah, that was one thing I was like, ooh, this is really 80s.
Not aged well at all.
Yeah.
They were basically, once the Demon Bear turned them, they could be cured of being zombies, but they couldn't be cured of being Native Americans. That condition they were going to be stuck with for the rest of their lives. It's a weird issue, to say the least. They gave a lot, like I said, they gave a lot to Magic. Al, what'd you think about that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like Chris said, actually, at this time, Magic and Mirage were two of the bigger characters in the New Mutants run. There's a lot of stuff done with them. There's a lot of issues that are almost just one or both of them. I mean, just before this series, there was like a 3-part story with the Hellions, which is like the Hellfire Club's version of the New Mutants. And pretty much everyone else gets captured but Magic and Mirage.
Oh yeah, they
and
talked
there's
about
a couple
that even during the Danger Room thing earlier. They do mention that, yeah.
Yeah. They mentioned they teleported away when they came back because of the way Limbo works. They came back like a few weeks into the future, and they were all part of the team. Like the New Mutants had joined the Hellions, and they went back mostly in time and stopped it, but they weren't sure if they went back enough to fully, that's why they weren't sure if they could trust the rest of the members of the team. To had something happened to them, had they been partially brainwashed already? But yeah, no, Claremont definitely liked those two characters, so they get a lot of play throughout his series. I mean, there's even an issue after Claremont leaves where he comes back for one issue. Chris, if you read, you know what I'm talking about. Issue 63, which just tells about the story of what happens with Magic in 21 when she teleports away and comes back in that space armor.
Yes.
Yeah, and you get a whole issue of...
Yeah, because he cuts in on the Simonson run for that issue, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that tells basically what happened in between, to her during that
panels,
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, he definitely likes those characters, and it's probably why they're some of my more favorite characters. Magic's one of my favorite X-Men, probably from reading this run a lot when I was younger.
So they spend most of the issue fighting the bear. Finally, as I said before, Magic uses the soul sword to cleave the bear in half. Out come Danny's parents. Also, I gotta read this. The man who had descended from the demon bear informed them that although evil had been driven out of their bodies, they could not undo the bear's original transformation enchantment. Yeah, that refers to what we were saying before. So there's some sort of individual, and maybe Chris, you can help me make sense of this. There's some sort of individual that had been warped in some way into this bear that was now free of this thing, as were Danny's parents. Is that about right?
I want to say so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, here's the thing. I looked up afterwards. The bear never really comes up again. There is a issue or two of, I think it's Uncanny X-Force, where Warpath deals with a version of the Demon Bear, but from what I was reading, because I was looking up, they never follow up on this. We don't know how the bear got formed, why, who was behind it.
John Francis Moore plays with the concept, but really doesn't stick the landing. Probably around, I want to say X-Force 100-ish.
Okay.
I know that Jesse Bedlam was already on the team, so it's probably close to 100, and it's before Counter X. It only gets, it really doesn't pay off, like you're saying. It's like you're saying, it doesn't pay off. It's just mentions really and allusions, but I think that might have actually been the first time I ever heard of the Demon Bear was in those X-Force issues, because I remember Usenet was popping pretty big for it.
here's something I don't particularly love about how this ends. So they have been saying the whole time that the bear mauled Danny pretty good, and that she was probably going to be paralyzed forever. And then Storm shows up with the Morlock healer, and there's a phrase that I picked up from another YouTube reviewer. He has since retired, and I don't know where he got this from, but he would just, when things didn't make sense in a movie, or stuff would just happen because that's what the plot needed it to happen, his go-to was a wizard did it. Literally, a wizard fixes her.
He does look like a wizard.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like bargain basement Gandalf.
He really does, or Merlin or something. I'm sitting there and reading this, and Storm's like, "Oh, you'll be able to laugh and play and jump and frolic, and you'll be just fine." And it's like, so all this time we've been told that this, all the stakes and everything about this character, the sacrifice, all that just goes out the window. It's like, well, we still need you around. We don't want to kill. This is like Lando in Star Wars. We don't want to kill off the only black character. We don't want to kill off the only native hero that we've got around here. So we'll give you back all. We'll give you back all your powers, all the feelings in your arms and legs, and you'll be just fine. Why? Because a wizard did it. That's why. I was like, that was kind of weak.
I mean, she is still injured for a while. I mean, in 21, she's in a wheelchair the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So she's not. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not completely disagreeing with you. But it's not like, at least it's not like the next issue she's running around kicking people in the face. She's barely able to get out of the chair. She almost passes out getting out of the chair. But I mean, they had the Morlocks. They even mentioned like the issue before the Starjammer was going to try and go, and the Starjammers had literally cloned Professor X into a new body recently. So
this sort of thing was not out of the ordinary.
Yeah, so to be fair, if you were reading these books and have been reading for at least a year or two, you were really not surprised by that. I mean, to be fair to the characters, though, they're not used to that bully, so they really that's all true for them until that actually happens. For all the characters, they actually thought that's what was going to happen. It's not like they were all like, "Oh, it's going to be fine." I mean, they played with that years later.
I think as a reader, it kind of gave me an eye roll, and I understand that maybe for a little while there, she's still recuperating. But it was still kind of like, I almost wish they had saved that for a different issue. Does that make sense?
I can see that. And that would actually have made more sense at this time with the serial version as opposed to if it was done now where they would have to have that at the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Unless the next whole story arc was going to be about finding the wizard who was going to cure her, so to speak. That would make more sense as the serial story if like that happened like 2 or 3 issues down the road.
Chris Sheehan, what did you think of this last issue proper of the Demonbear Saga?
No, I dug it. The wide open spaces really don't do it for me as a setting for a battle. It made me kind of feel like I was watching Dragon Ball or seeing something happening on the astral plane, which always conks me out. But I liked the way that they took care of business. I liked Sam getting like really, really, really bent out of shape when Magic stabs Amara. Because she's trying to drive the possession out of her, and he just flips his lid, and bolts her. And one thing about Claremont that I love is his knack for the whole concept that every issue is somebody's first. Because like every time Sam blasts for the first time, he's like, "I'm nigh invulnerable when I'm blasting," So you get that every single time, and I love it. So we get that, and we get Magic saying, "Well, he's nigh invulnerable when he's blasting, but he just dropped me." So I like that. I thought this was a pretty cleverly done. The ending kind of came out of nowhere with just cutting them in half. I was expecting a little bit more than that, and it's been forever since I've read this. But I guess it ended the way it was going to end.
Yeah, actually, to me, the ending when it get to the ending, it was kind of a bit of like, well, yeah, duh, stupid kids. Magic, this is a magical creature. Your sword disrupts all magical things. Let's see. Let's try using your sword more often on it.
Yeah, why didn't you do that 15 pages ago? Yeah.
But, I mean, it does make sense with kids in training.
Sure.
I think that's what drove me nuts about this overall, is that if I was just, if I go to work tomorrow and they're like, "How was your day off?" And I'm like, "Oh, I read the Demonbear Saga." What's that? Okay, the story is some girl tries to fight a mystical demon bear. She nearly gets killed in the process. So her friends take up arms, and they fight the bear, and they beat the thing not once but twice. And in the end, he got cut in half by a magic sword. That's the bare bones of this story.
Well, yeah. It's the art and characterization, I think, that makes the story more than just that bare plot.
Yeah, no, and I get that. There's a skinny strand of a plot here that they hung a lot of characterization and a lot of a lot of heavy themes and whatnot on. So I get all that. It's just.
Oh, I'm not going to argue on that part about the plot, though. I'm not going to debate you on that one at all. I'm going to agree with you there. I'm just.
This is why I always laugh at the first season of Doom Patrol, where at the end we're like, we finally got into the punchy parts. I mean, just that send up of comic books to where, and I've talked about this before on other source materials. You know, so today I read this, and I also read Bill and Ted Save the Universe, which was a 5-issue limited series, and they don't spend, and the difference is they spent 2 issues fighting with this bear, you know, and not much else was happening. Now, there's stuff happening within the fight itself, which I get, and I don't want to seem like I'm just shitting all over the story, but that's a lot. That's a lot of fighting and punchiness and just, like, nothing else is happening in the story, and as opposed to when I read Bill and Ted, which you're like, oh, well, Bill and Ted was probably stupid. There's a lot happens in those 5 issues. Like, there's a lot of relationship stuff happening. There's a lot of they're not just fighting, and I think that's what drives me nuts about especially some of like the early '80s stories that we've read, where I feel like so much of it. Like, we read an Avengers story from around this time, and I felt like half of it was just them fighting a thing, and I was like, I need a little more than that. Does that make sense to you guys?
I guess so.
Let each other go first.
I think if the Demon Bear came out right now, it would probably be like 14 issues long. So
yeah,
when I see something that's kind of compressed and we get a lot of fighting just over the course of 2 issues instead of over the course of like a year's worth of issues, I'm kissing the ground. I'm happy because what this would be now would be pages and pages and pages of 9-panel grids of characters talking to one another about how they feel that Danny's in a coma or Danny's hurt. And we'd still get the same fight, but it would be stretched out over the course of forever.
And then I'd be complaining it was too long.
Yeah. Exactly, because that's what we do in comics. We don't find the happy medium. The pendulum swings as far as it can either direction.
Exactly.
So this was compressed. And as someone who is very, very tired of decompressed, this was refreshing to me. I wouldn't want this stretched out anymore. I wouldn't want a whole lot more added to it outside of the fight, because the fight's going to happen. So get it out of the way, I guess.
And also, I was thinking about what you were just saying, Mark, and it kind of does fit a bit, though, in the fact that the Bill and Ted story is only 5 issues. So therefore, it's like, okay, what story are we going to tell, and how do we tell it in 5 issues? As opposed to here,
self-contained.
Yeah, this is at the height of Claremont being on the X-Men. He was not going anywhere on these 2 books. He was on the books at this point. He had the books unless he did not want them. So it was, I am telling this story I'm not telling a specific story of Bill and Ted Save the Universe. I am just telling the lives of these characters. For however long it takes, however many issues, back and forth, doesn't matter. Because that's also how it's being done. It's very much serialized, almost like a soap opera, So every episode goes to the next one, to the next one, to the next one.
I would also say that kind of like a television show, if you're a young reader, you expect there to be some sort of action in every issue. And when your only villain is the Demon Bear, he's gonna get more than one fight. So I understand that, and I can certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you're not wrong for feeling the way you are about the story still. It's how you feel about the story. You either But it's just also, I'm thinking of it that way. It's like, makes sense. Miniseries, you have to kind of go, get my story done in that amount of time. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you don't have too much of a story to fit in there where it's too cluttered.
Right.
Here, he had just, Claremont could have made this go for 10 issues if he wanted to, back and forth, and go back to it and come back or not if he wanted to. He wasn't going anywhere. He was the king of Marvel at the time, pretty much.
Yeah, and they've been dropping hints about the Demonbear since almost the very first issue of New Mutants. Mm-hmm. So this has been a bubble and subplot for over a year at this point, which is another Claremont hallmark. He was the king of the bubble and subplot. So this was a payoff of one of those.
So I'll give you guys the last words, Al, and then Chris. I gotta make sure I have to remember to keep calling on you guys. Instead of just throwing a random question out there and one of you will answer it. Al, I'll give you the final word here. Your thoughts on the entire Demonbear Saga, this era of New Mutants, whatever else you want to talk about.
All right. I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite New Mutants story, but I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, I love that Sienkiewicz art, so I can always just stare at it. Makes me wish Magma had gotten used more. I got more characterization further on, but this is probably the height of the characterization Magma gets, I think, throughout this whole series.
I was going to say, I don't see much of Magma in the future issues of X titles. What happens to her?
By issue 50-something, they send her off, and she just kind of bounces
home,
around.
Right? Does she go to...
She goes home, and then she gets sent to join the Hellfire Club, the Hellions, and then they kind of half the time forget she exists.
Yeah, and then she was just like someone who stands in the background of big piles of mutants at the mansion, around 2000, 2002-ish. I remember the new X-Men title, the new X-Men Academy X came out, and she was just there, just hanging out in the background, and not without much pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, and it's too bad because she's one of the earlier mutants. They only had 7 or 8 X-Men in this team. But she kind of gets dropped off. So this is the height of her characterization. And it's too bad she could have done more with them. But I always like seeing Magic. So she got plenty of play here. And the thing is, reading this, especially when you're younger, you want to... the thing about the series was the characters. Especially if you were a teenager, you wanted to hang out with them. You wanted to go to the school and hang out with these kids. And be part of their lives. So that's the main thing. It's not so much the plots, even, is just the friendships and the camaraderie and the characters.
All right. Chris Sheehan, take me home, baby doll.
I liked it a lot. Not as much as I thought I was going to on reread, but I did very much like it.
Let me stop you there.
Sure.
What do you think degraded in terms of your enjoyment? What about the story reads different to you now than it read when you were younger? Is it talk to me about your change in how you view it?
It might just be my expectation, but it also might be. You know me. I'm a weird dude. I punish the father for the sin of the son. When I look at the X-Men nowadays, I'm trying my damnedest to get back into it, and there's a certain amount of heart in this story, this Demonbear story here, in this entire run of New Mutants. There's heart that I feel is lacking now, and has been lacking for a very long time, which, for whatever reason, hinders my appreciation of the things that I love. I'm a very weird dude in that way.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When the Scarlet Witch said no more mutants, how did you feel?
Oh, God. Brian Bendis has ruined a lot of characters and a lot of concepts. That was one of them. It was, like I just said earlier, comics is the pendulum that overcorrects. When Grant Morrison came onto the X-Men, instead of just adding a few X-Men, he added tens of thousands of mutants. There was a mutant population boom. And when he left Marvel with a problem. There's way too many mutants. The way they fixed it is the way Marvel usually fixes things, which is asinine, by doing mysticism, making deals with the devil, and hexing things out of existence. But I hated it. I hated it, and the fact that they did it in the first place and didn't know where to go from there, because it would get brought up. It was like the legacy virus in the 90s. It's like they made this thing and it's like, ooh, that's pretty cool. And they forgot because they didn't know what to do with it. What is step 2? What is step 3? We don't even know what step 1 is yet. So how are we going to get there?
So it's a lot of
with the
underpants
No More
gnomes, huh?
Mutants thing.
So no more mutant. Step 1, no more mutant. Step 3, profit. Step 1, legacy virus.
Yes.
Step 3, profit.
Yes. Yeah, because
Yeah.
like you'd get like a panel of Beast like every 3 months going like, I'm working on that thing with the virus, or I'm working on the thing with the mutants not being here anymore, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess they're still working on it, and that would be it.
And Chris, I can see what you're saying about the heart of this, because I think one thing is, like you said, how many mutants they have. Here, there was only like a dozen or so.
Yeah.
So anything that happened to any of them, or losing any of them, mattered more. Now there's
sure.
and every time there's a new relaunch or a new book, they have to introduce a whole new team and like a whole bunch of characters to join, and then half of them vanish and they never show up again, or they just decide to kill them off in some random panel. I mean, does that happen to like half of Generation X? They just kind of die off panel almost.
Well, they didn't even show them die. They just buried them on the school grounds, and they got their names wrong.
Yeah, it's almost like, well, does it really matter if it's not like Wolverine?
It's just
Or Storm or Cyclops?
No, it doesn't.
Does it really matter? Like, you have all these characters, like, oh, so they die, big deal.
No.
It's like, oh, maybe
'Cause
somebody did something with them for a few issues where I cared, but then they go away and we don't see them, and somebody else comes on and they're like, well, I like these 4 characters, so I'm just going to write them, and it kind of feels like the way for me, like the X-Men movies kind of fail for me, which is like each movie, it's like, okay, we're just going to use these characters because, well, we decided these names fit what we're going to use. We want to use these names, and so therefore they're going to fit the story we want to tell. And whatever happened last time doesn't matter. We might even kill off half of the map off panel, off screen.
Yeah, the stakes now are very, very low. And they have been ever since, like, editorials just handed the power over to whoever's writing them if they're hot enough. It's like, well, that person died in a very, very classic scene, but, oh, you want to write them anyway? Okay, I guess they're not dead anymore. I remember when the Buffy the Vampire Slayer guy came to Slummin' Comics for a minute and tried to screw the X-Men up. He brought Colossus back, who died a very noble death, and this was during the era where dead was dead. And, well, no, the Buffy guy wants him, so let's do it. And I think that might have been like my watershed moment with just realizing that there are no stakes anymore, and there's even less heart.
My favorite thing about the No More Mutants, and I haven't read House of M, I'm saving that for when WandaVision concludes next year. We'll do House of M then, when we do the TV party for WandaVision.
What's WandaVision?
WandaVision is a Disney Plus television show featuring the Scarlet Witch and the Vision.
Oh,
the Vision,
Christ.
who is dead, by the way. I guess. Yeah.
It's more feasible to bring an android back to a robot or an android back to life than person.
That's why I could never get into Transformers, because it's like, oh, well, the robot died. Well, build it again. Okay.
plug it into the wall. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Order some parts. Come on.
But my favorite thing about House of M that I was aware of, because somebody had told me about it, and I read a little like summaries here or there, just to kind of did some wiki research on it, and my favorite thing was No More Mutants. Okay, all the mutants are gone. Well, what about the popular ones? What about Wolverine? Well, he doesn't count. Like, it was selective saving based on how many issues of a comic you sold.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like we got about 200 left. Yeah, we got about 200 left, and they're all the ones that we want to write. That coincidentally, they're all the main characters.
Mm-hmm. And a few novelty acts, so we can look like we actually follow comic books. I remember the what is it, like Make Your Own Mutant contest in the 80s. They created a character called Alchemy, who showed up in 2 issues and was one of the 187 that survived the No More Mutants hex. It's very, and Jeff Johns created one called like Litterbug, and that one survived too, because why not?
All right.
Yeah.
Chris, yeah. I cut you off as you were trying to wrap up here. So is there anything else you want to say before we call it a night?
We'll call that a mercy killing, because I probably would still be going on that very same rant. So it's probably good you cut me off.
All right. Well, I want to thank Al Sedano, and I want to thank Chris Sheehan for joining me on this conversation about the Demonbear Saga. Al, go ahead and plug your podcast.
Sure, it's Resurrections and Adam Warlock and Thanos podcast. It's, well, all about Adam Warlock, the Marvel characters Adam Warlock and Thanos. I mean, it's right in the name. And so even if you don't know them from the comics, it's Thanos. You've seen the movies. You know who he is. So resurrectionsadamwarlock.tumblr.com. Just type in Adam Warlock or Thanos into whatever podcatcher you're using. It'll pop up.
What are you doing these days? What are you working on?
We just finished up the stuff in the 70s, actually, that I mentioned earlier, where Adam and Thanos died. And right now, we have a couple episodes coming out, jumping ahead to doing the Jim Starlin Thanos graphic novels that came out in the last few years. So I have 4 episodes coming out doing the Infinity Entity miniseries.
Have you ever done Thanos Rising?
No, not yet.
Okay, I read that one back a few years ago. I picked up the trade. It was an interesting read, to say the least.
I have actually not read that yet.
Okay. Have you ever read Hulk versus Thanos, where Thanos isn't in the book?
Yes.
That is a frustrating read.
Well, do you know why?
Go ahead.
Because there was a Savage Hulk book out at the time, which is basically, we mentioned earlier, Legend of the Dark Knight. It was a Hulk book where different creators were going to be doing different Hulk stories at different points in his career. You know, you probably mostly featuring when he was big, dumb, and green, but at different points. That was supposed to be a Savage Hulk story, and that book is kind of one of those books where, you know, like Marvel DC will come up with a title and then they kind of cancel it, but they don't really tell anyone they're canceling it. It just kind of stops showing up.
Okay.
Well, that book kind of just stopped showing up, and instead they had it come out as a Thanos vs. Hulk series. Probably because the movies were out at the time and Thanos was a lot more popular, pretty popular. So it's like, hey, let's put his name on here. So it actually wasn't really written to be a Thanos vs. Hulk miniseries.
Because if I remember correctly, it's Hulk basically versus
Annihilus.
Annihilus.
And actually, that leads into all those Thanos graphic novels that I'm covering right now.
Oh, okay. So are you going to talk about the Hulk versus
Thanos? We did that already.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that a while ago in this series. But
Very
we did
good,
that because we're getting near the end of those graphic novels.
Well, we hope to have you back soon if there's something that tickles your fancy. It was certainly a joy to have you on the show tonight. Chris, go ahead and plug your podcast, sir.
Okie dokie. You can find me over at chrisandreggie.podbean.com. There are a lot of shows going on right now. There is Morituri Mondays every Monday with me and Chris Bailey going through every issue of Strike Force Morituri.
What happened to your ElfQuest show? You did like one episode and I haven't seen it since.
That was a sneak preview because that's going to replace Morituri Mondays on the schedule when we finish that series.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was Questa Days, and that'll probably be starting in the fall when we finish with Strike Force Morituri. We're also going to be doing a deep dive on Marvel's new universe pretty soon, going month by month through that entire deal. Which it's going to be a really interesting one because Chris Bailey is something of an expert, and I have only read like 3 issues. So I think it's going to be a pretty fun dynamic where I get to learn and experience it all for the very first time. It's not often that I get to do a show where I'm experiencing something for the first time, but that will be one of them. There's also From Claremont to Claremont, which is about halfway through the 3rd episode, and it's already like 8 hours long, so that's going to be a long one. And then there is a show I just launched as we record this today called X-Lapsed, where I am trying to catch myself up on the Hox Pox Docs era of X-Men, which is right now. And doing that issue by issue. First episode came out today. The second episode will be coming out tomorrow. So it's going to be hopefully breezy, and hopefully I'll be able to stick with it and finally get caught up and be X-relevant again.
And somewhere out there, maybe we'll finally see the second issue of Blogging Into the Void.
Yeah, dude, I shit the bed on that. I'm working on trying to clean that up pretty good here. I was a hurting unit when we did that one. I was not doing good, but I'll try to clean that up. But there's also the blog Chris is on Infinite Earths, which is still updated every single day. And I'm on Twitter at Ace Comics.
All right,
You're making me feel lazy.
Yeah, between me and him have like 100 podcasts between the two of us.
I almost forgot. I am on a second show though. I almost forgot. LEGION cast. It's on the Legion of Substitute Podcasters feed. We're covering the '90s DC Legion series. The acronym
yes,
series.
where Lobo showed up.
Yes, Lobo's a main character actually.
That's right. Yeah, that's one of the ones I did read from like I think beginning to end, or whenever, or from beginning to whenever I stopped reading comics. But that's the infamous one that I always talk to Jesse about, where they're trying to get new recruits into Legions. Tell me if you remember this. Please tell me you remember this. They're trying to get a bunch of new recruits into Legion, and they're like, "What power do you do?" And the guy shows off his power. "What power do you do?" This guy shows off his power, and then he points to this guy, and he's like, "All right, what do you do?" He goes, "I swell up like this," and he just gets fat. I love that.
I've read some of it, but actually I've not read most of that series, so a lot of that is new for me.
Okay, Jesse and I went I'm used to not going off on tangents. Jesse and I are usually pretty tight. We stay on target. But there was one night where wouldn't let the podcast continue until we found that issue, and I had to show him that panel. And then I think he posted it all over Facebook.
I'll try to remember when we get to that. We're up to like issue 14, I think, or 15. No, we just recorded 15 last night, actually.
Okay. I don't remember which issue it was. It's early on in the run, though, so maybe you sped past and it wasn't quite as meaningful to you as it was to me.
There was nothing like that. No recruits having a tryout yet. So we definitely have not gotten to that. Trust me, we would have said something about that.
Okay, well, I want you to think of me when you get to the guy that says I swell up like this. Because I swear to God, now I had to have read that. Well, that's the early 90s, isn't it?
Yeah, it starts in 89 and goes to like 94 because it ends around the time of 0 Hour.
Okay.
So yeah, 94.
So I was definitely reading it contemporaneously, and I remember because my friend and I were both reading the comic, and we both read that issue and saw the guy go, "I swell up like this," and so help me God, I'm 44 years old. I haven't stopped saying that bit. Where it's just wherever I can, I can just go, "I swell up like this," and I do the hand motions and everything. This is an audio format. I'm currently doing the hand motions.
Well, of course, we can see that. But yeah, Chris, I've definitely listened to that one because I just got my Hoxpox hardcover in today.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, I look forward to hearing your thoughts because that's a series that's making me feel very dumb. So I said this during the episode. I'm working on my third psychology degree. I'm working on a postmaster's degree, and Hoxpox is making me feel like an idiot. So
so you're doing other things too. Jeez, God, it made me feel so lazy.
Well,
don't envy mental illness and addiction. Yes.
We've this is our second podcast today, our fourth this week. We did 2 movie reviews. We did one for Bill and Ted Face the Music. We did another one for the New Mutants. We were slightly more positive on Bill and Ted than we were the New Mutants. By the way, have you had an opportunity to see the New Mutants, Al?
No.
Are you going to?
I don't know. I mean, I really am not thrilled about going to the movies now.
Okay.
Although we'll see how it goes with life because I know that the Ruskin Theater, the drive-in, is going to be playing it.
Okay. That's a good place to see it.
That's a maybe with life though getting away and everything. So we'll see.
Okay. Let me tell you first, it's not good. It's bad.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's also what I was hearing. So I was kind of like, well, why would I want to waste my time on something like that? I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Fox X-Men movies anyways. I kind of mentioned before, so.
Okay. I mean, I would recommend going to see it just because if you like the Demonbear Saga, just kind of see how they handled it. And I think proper respect was paid to the story. I just don't think it was executed very well. And we did a whole podcast explaining why we think that. So yeah, we reviewed New Mutants, we reviewed Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Are you going to ask me if I'm going to see it?
No, because I know you're not.
Okay.
I already know your gimmick, pal. We did, speaking of Chris Sheehan, we did him and Chris Bailey, the Podsman. We did a review of WWE Payback today. That's already in the archives. Tomorrow we'll do a second source material for this week. We got Bill and Ted Save the Universe. That'll be fun. And Sean assures me we are, in fact, doing a long road to ruin this Thursday for the first 2 Bill and Ted movies. You can also hear our review of The One and Only Ivan, SummerSlam, NXT 30, and Unleash the Archer's Abyss. Next week, we've got a whole bunch of movies to review. Again, we've got Mulan, we've got Tenet, we've got AEW All Out. Myself and Chris Bailey will review that. And then we've got Season 3 of Agresco from Netflix. So I just finished that up today. Myself and David Wright will talk all about it next week. So you can check all those out on the WTM feed. Just type in WTM in any of your podcast catchers and you will find us. Of course, you already know that if you're listening to this, so that's redundant. All right, thank you for joining us here on Source Material Live. Jesse, we love you. We miss you. Yay! Be well.
Hi, Jesse.
Be well, be safe, and behave.